Welcome back, students. We are still busy with topic 1, information processing in the business organization. Our lesson for today is module 4, the importance of accurate information in an organization, and that is on page 23 of our prescribed textbook. Our learning outcomes for this lesson is number 1, identify factors that assist managers to take meaningful decisions. And number 2, identify the characteristics that a manager needs to be able to analyze information. As our introduction, let's look at that first paragraph. Using information systems creates an opportunity in an organization for improved decision making, competitive advantage, as well as for survival of the company. Decision making is improved when information systems and technologies provide managers with real-time data from various sources when making decisions. Now, what we mean by real-time data is that it is data that is the most recent data available to us on the information system, and it's also the data that is the most up-to-date, because that kind of data will be giving the best information to managers on which they can actually base their decisions. Our second section is factors that need to be considered during decision making. So what kind of factors do we need to consider whenever we need to make decisions as managers? The factors that need to be considered when making decisions are as follows. Now, number 1 is risk. Number 2 is human considerations. Number 3 is cost. Then we have pressures and stress. We have policy. We have change. And we're going to be looking at each one of these individually in the next 1 or 2 slides, starting with risk. Okay, so risk is the first factor that we have to consider whenever we have to make important decisions. There's a definition of risk, and we can define risk as the chance of something going wrong or something being damaged. So please know that definition, and if they ask you in test or exam to define risk, then this is the definition you need to give. You can also add to this definition the following, that in terms of decision making, we can say that risk is the chance that a decision that we've made could be the wrong decision, and it might lead to a negative consequence of some sort. Okay, so in this case, in terms of decision making, risk is the chance that we made the wrong decision and that wrong decision might have negative consequences for the company. Next, we can look at a few situations that actually increase risk. The first one is when you are faced with a situation where you need to make certain crucial decisions and not enough fact-based information is available to you on which you can base your decisions. In other words, in this case, you're going to make uninformed decisions, or you might even go over into taking other people's opinions and using those opinions to base your decision upon. Okay, and those people's opinions might also not be based on any sort of facts. So there's a big risk that in this situation, poor decisions might be made because there's not enough fact-based information on which the decision can be based. Secondly, if you're not aware of all the factors that actually influence this particular situation on which you have to work in order to come up with a specific decision or solution or that kind of thing. So you're not aware of all the factors that influence the situation, and that can affect, there's a risk that it can affect your decision making. Number 3, being an inexperienced decision maker in terms of not having the relevant knowledge or skill or experience for that particular scenario or situation about which you need to make a decision. The last one, let's say, for example, top management was faced with a certain problem. They had to come up with certain solutions and make decisions about it. And now that they've made a decision that needs to be implemented, Remember, it's not to say that everybody is going to accept that decision that was made in a positive manner. Especially non-managerial staff might be negative about that particular decision that was made, and so there is a really big risk at that stage that a staff member can give, sort of give resistance to that decision that was made, and that can hinder or prevent successful implementation of the decision that was made. Okay, in the next list we are going to look at some guidelines that can actually assist in assessing risk more effectively. The first one is consider that the risk of failure might be greater than the importance of achieving the goal. Okay, so there should be a nice balance here. The risk of failure might not be or shouldn't be so big or bigger than, for example, the benefit that we're going to be getting out of it. Okay, so if the risk involved in failure is bigger than the benefit that we're going to be getting out of it, then it might not be worthwhile following that particular decision anymore. The next one is assess the potential sources of failure and have a plan to deal with them. Number 3, do not consider taking a risk if the negative outcomes are too high. So you can see now that this third one actually links up with the first one that we spoke about, now, where we said that the negative outcomes or the risk of failure shouldn't be higher than the benefit, for example, that we're going to be getting out of a particular decision that we have made, or the importance of achieving the goal. Always be aware of your limitations when you have to make decisions, and that will also now sort of control the risk factor a little bit. Number 3, do not make emotional decisions. Okay, the reason is that emotional decisions tend to make people be irrational, and when they make decisions when they're irrational, then decisions are most definitely not going to be of a very good quality, or the right decisions even. Okay, so never make decisions when you are emotional. So in this case, what I want to stress here is that whenever decisions are made, they should be made from a rational state of mind, not an emotional, irrational state of mind. The last one we're looking at there for that list is that you should involve other people in the decision-making process. And that will also, if you look at the previous point, the emotional decision-making, if there's a lot of people making the decision together, the chances of all of them being in a bad emotional state at that stage is not so good. So there's a good balance that you're bringing in when you are bringing other people into that decision-making process as well. Okay, 2.2, we look at human considerations. The first one we looked at was risk, that was 2.1. Now we're looking at human considerations. Now the following human factors affect decision-making. We've already actually mentioned this quite a few times, but previous knowledge or experience, or even interest, someone's interest in a particular situation or decision that needs to be made, will definitely influence how involved a person will actually want to be in a particular decision-making process. Okay, so the more knowledge and experience or interest someone has, the more involved they will be in that decision-making process. Number 2, people consider how a decision will affect them personally, and in that case there's 2 ways that they might react. Okay, some people will feel that the decision affects them negatively. They're not happy with it, so they will blame the decision maker. That's the first one. And the second one is other people might look at this decision that's been taken, they look at how it's going to affect them, but they see it as a learning experience. So even though they might not fully agree with it or be 100% positive about it, they might still see it as a learning experience and go along with it. A manager's natural tendency to be either a negative or a positive thinker will affect the reliability of the decision or solution that the manager actually comes up with. So just take note there, the person might be a very positive or a very negative person, and that is going to affect the person's decision making or the solution, type of solutions they come up with. Okay, although decision making should always be based on facts and data, because we are looking at human considerations here and managers are human beings, we must always keep in mind that a manager might have opinions and other characteristics that will influence their thinking from time to time. In other words, the manager might not base his decision making upon facts and data, but rather his own opinions or some other characteristics that to his personality. And that can also definitely affect someone's decision making ability. Okay, the next factor is called cost. That's 2.3. The best decision-making practices keep cost in perspective in relation to other critical factors. Okay, so staff members should be given financial levels of authority that restrict what they are allowed to authorize and should also require additional approval from supervisors. So if you just think about that organizational structure that we looked at in a previous presentation, it means that at each level of authority, there must be certain restrictions placed on those employees on a particular level in terms of the finances. So what they can authorize and not authorize, or approve and not approve at the different levels. So for example, there are things that the CEO might be able to authorize in terms of finances that, for example, a lower level manager might not be able to authorize. So that's the kind of thing. In this way, you actually keep good control over the cost factor in this particular situation. An important concept to understand when dealing with cost factors is what's called total cost. Okay, now what is total cost? In a nutshell, total cost will include the items one can accurately and directly determine or calculate, as well as other costs that are not easily measured. Okay, what are those items that we cannot really directly or accurately measure? They are, for example, in terms of a certain decision being made, what is the impact going to be on employee morale? Okay, are they going to be very negative, the employees, and not enjoy their work anymore? Number two, employees not being happy with the working conditions. And number three, the customers might even be disappointed after a certain decision have been taken. Okay, so what we are trying to say here is that the total cost will include the cost of items that we can actually determine or calculate, okay, by using a calculator or some kind of a spreadsheet system or whatever the case may be. But they can accurately and directly be calculated, but it's also going to include those costs that we cannot directly or accurately measure or calculate, such as those three that we've just mentioned there. And we refer to these ones that we cannot directly calculate or measure as being intangible costs. So please take note of that terminology there. Okay, the next factor is policy, 2.4. What are policies? Policies describe what type of action to take in a certain situation. Okay, we can also talk about policies and procedures. Now, so policies and procedures are actually the exact steps that are outlined to guide or give direction whenever decisions have to be made. Then they can be done according to certain policies and procedures that have been set in place by top management. So when organizations have clearly defined policies and procedures, then decision making can be delegated quite effectively. What do we mean by delegated, guys? There's another word that you can learn that comes from the word delegated, which is called delegation. Okay, now what is that? It refers to when a task is given to another employee which is at a lower level, and then that employee will be able to deal with that particular task because he or she has the proper knowledge, the proper skills, and the proper experience in order to deal with that task that has been delegated to him or her. If policies are in place for appropriate situations, then employees know exactly what the boundaries are and are able to make decisions within those boundaries without constantly asking for assistance from their managers. This is the big benefit of structured decision making. If you think about what we discussed in, I think it was maybe 3 presentations before this one, we spoke about the levels of management, the levels at which management have to make decisions, and we said what kind of decisions they made. And you will remember that at the lowest level of management, the type of decisions they make there is called structured decisions. And we said that it's structured decisions because it goes along with specific policies and specific procedures. In other words, there are exact steps outlined for whenever decisions have to be made. Then they are made according to those policies and those procedures. Okay, so then it's very easy to delegate that decision-making task or something to a lower level employee. The next one is change. That's 2.5. So before a final decision is made, we also always need to consider how much change will be required in order to implement that particular decision that is made. Also keep human considerations in mind. We have spoken about this in a previous slide. And since people react to change differently based on their attitude and their experience, so we must always consider, guys, that just because we made a decision and as management they feel that it's the best decision, it's not to say that people will receive that decision in the same positivity or attitude, if I can put it that way. Some will be positive about it and others will be very negative in terms of how they experience those changes. Change and human considerations have a really big influence on decision making. Now, our third section that we're looking at in this particular lesson is called the characteristics that managers need when they are analyzing information. Okay, so let's look at the table that I've prepared for you. And this list below, guys, will outline exactly the characteristics required of a manager to effectively analyze information. The first characteristic is called interest or interested. In other words, the person must be interested in the job at hand. And if he or she is actually interested in the job at hand, they will be able to more effectively analyze information. So that's what this first characteristic is all about. The second characteristic is the person needs to be self-motivated. They need to have initiative. We already discussed the initiative, so you guys know exactly what initiative means. We had it in a previous previous presentation, as well as the person must be disciplined. So self-motivated, you should have initiative and also be disciplined. Okay, so in this particular case, the person will be working well without any supervision, takes initiative, and considers all relevant information. So just to recap this thing, the person is self-motivated, the person works disciplined. In other words, nobody has to look over his shoulder to see whether or not he or she is doing his or her work, and the person also takes initiative. Then another characteristic is imaginative. If you're imaginative, it means you analyze information according to company procedures when you have to do it. Okay, then you will do it according to that, but you are also able, this is now where the imaginative part comes in, you are also able to think out of the box. In other words, having different approaches of analyzing information, not sticking to one method the whole time. You can think out of the box. Then you are imaginative. The last one there, having an awareness of what is worthwhile. That refers to the ability to focus on what information is actually important to what you are busy analyzing, and you are also able to see what information is not important, and then you ignore that information. So there's an awareness of what is worthwhile, in other words, what's important and what is not important. Okay, on this list we have a few more characteristics that we are looking at, and the next one is the person must be methodical or meticulous whenever they analyze information, and it means that they are approaching the information analysis in a very thorough and systematic, that means step-by-step manner, in order to reduce mistakes. So you're not going to be skipping any steps, you're not going to be skipping any information, you're going to do it step by step, very thoroughly, from point A to point Z until you are finished. Then you are methodical and meticulous. The person must be able to detect patterns. Remember, you're busy analyzing information. So in this characteristic, you're able to actually spot certain patterns that tend to repeat themselves in the information that you are busy analyzing. Okay, you must be analytical. What does it mean if you're analytical? If you're analytical, it means you are faced with a certain situation, or you are faced with information that you have to analyze, and now you start breaking this information down into its individual components that it consists of, in order to find out why something is actually happening and what the effect will be. Able to synthesize. Okay, so now in the previous step, being analytical, we said you break it down into its smallest individual components in order to make sense of what's going on. Now in this last step, being able to synthesize, it means you're actually able to take all of this information that you've analyzed now, the things you've broken up into its individual components, and you're now able to actually put it back together, summarize it in a way that makes it to make more sense. So you will then be able to actually summarize it in such a way that you can now explain it to other people, and then they can also understand what's going on with this particular set of information that you have analyzed. Okay guys, that was it for this particular lesson. You are more than welcome to watch this presentation as many times as you want, or as many times as you need, in order to be confident that you understand the work and that you will be able to give the correct answers in a test or exam. And we will see each other in the next lesson.